It all happened a few months ago, and it was the worst nightmare of my life. I just quit my dreary accounting job and decided to take a long vacation, hoping to completely unwind. I booked a cabin on Airbnb called Silent Forest Retreat, tucked away in a remote mountainous area of New Hampshire, surrounded by dense forest with barely any cell service. The listing sounded idyllic, promising an escape from the hustle and bustle, a chance to connect with nature, and a quaint wooden cabin rich in history and local lore. At the time, it felt like exactly what I needed, a place to truly disconnect. On the first night, I was reading by the fireplace. Rain pattered outside, and the firelight flickered on the wooden walls, creating a profound sense of peace. Just as I was drifting off, a shattering sound of glass suddenly echoed from the kitchen. I jolted upright from the sofa, my heart skipping several beats. The house had been so quiet, and the sound was incredibly jarring and loud. I froze, adrenaline coursing through me, trying desperately to find a rational explanation. Did something fall? But I hadn't left anything glass in the kitchen except for one cup. And the sound wasn't the clean shatter of a cup hitting the floor. It was more like something being violently smashed with a strange, dull resonance. The air in the house seemed to thicken instantly. The earlier sense of ease vanished, replaced by an intense alertness and unease. I grabbed the fire axe from beside the fireplace. I knew it was clumsy and ridiculous, but in that moment, anything that offered a sense of security was worth it. I carefully crept to the kitchen doorway and peered inside. There was no broken glass on the floor, nothing at all. Just as my heart started to settle a bit, ready to tell myself it was just my imagination, I noticed something on the dining table. In the small wooden bowl where I kept my keys, there was a black button. It looked old, with worn edges, as if torn from a heavy coat. This definitely wasn't mine. It hadn't been there when I arrived. My mind went blank. This button was an undeniable warning. Its silent appearance in a place that should have been secure was far more unsettling than any sound. A chilling sense of being watched crept over me, as if someone had silently entered and left, leaving this tiny piece of evidence to mock my sense of safety. As the night deepened, the rain intensified. I locked myself in the bedroom, my back pressed against the door, clutching the fire axe. I dared not move. Outside, the wind howled, and raindrops hammered against the windows. Every rustle and tap made my heart race. Just when I thought I was on the verge of breaking down, a faint shush-shush sound came from right outside the door, like something slowly dragging across the wood. My breathing stopped. Then a strong, musty smell of damp earth seeped through the door crack, making my stomach churn. And then I heard it, a slow, distinct scraping sound, as if someone was using a fingernail or something sharp to carve a pattern into my door. It was one deliberate scrape after another, like some macabre ritual. I stared fixedly at the door, cold sweat soaking through my clothes. The feeling of being targeted, of being played with, was suffocating. Then, the doorknob suddenly violently twisted downwards. I let out a short, choked scream, instinctively bracing myself against the door with all my strength. The door slammed with a thud, and my heart lurched in my chest. Then, a low voice came from outside the door. It was hoarse, almost inhuman, as if something was lodged in its throat. "You are home." With each word, the door was slammed again. I felt like I was going to wet myself, my whole body trembling. The voice was full of menace and sickening confirmation, like a predator declaring its prey. What utterly broke me was the chilling familiarity of that voice. It was identical to the night whistler, described in a local abandoned farm legend I'd read about online. A legend that spoke of him appearing in the dead of night, whispering to find his chosen person. The icy, hunted despair of being preyed upon instantly consumed me. My mind went blank. My only thought was to get out. The bedroom window was barred, so escape that way was impossible. I scanned the room, my gaze falling on the nightstand. I'd casually tossed a small Swiss Army knife there when I arrived. I knew it wouldn't be much use, but in that moment, it was my only weapon. I snatched it up, fumbling to open the longest blade. The banging and the terrifying voice continued outside the door. I knew it wouldn't hold much longer. With every ounce of strength I had, I lunged at the door and stabbed at the doorknob. The blade bit into the wood. While it didn't completely jam the handle, it temporarily prevented it from turning. I bought myself a few precious seconds. Then, I spun around and rushed towards the wardrobe in the bedroom. It was built into the wall, and behind it, I figured, was the exterior wall. With all my might, I pried open the wooden panel at the bottom of the wardrobe, revealing a cramped, dark ventilation shaft. I had no idea where it led, but I had no other choice. The voice outside grew more frantic and excited, and the door let out creaking, splintering sounds. I knew it was about to give way. Without hesitation, I scrambled headfirst into the narrow opening. It was pitch black inside, and a cold, damp smell assaulted my nostrils. I crawled and crawled. I don't know how long I was in there, but eventually, in the darkness, I felt a loose cover. I pushed it open with all my might, and a gush of cold air, smelling of rain and earth, hit my face. I was out. I tumbled directly into the bushes outside, covered in mud. I scrambled to my feet, stumbling through the dense woods, not caring about the mud or the scratching branches. I don't know how far I ran until I saw a faint light in the distance, and only then did a sliver of hope ignite within me. Eventually, I found help at a dilapidated gas station. The people there, seeing my disheveled state, immediately called the police. The police went to the cabin, but they found nothing except the damaged door and a few scattered items. No black button, nothing. They said it was as if no one had ever been there. I described everything that happened in detail to the police, but they didn't seem to fully believe me, just suggesting it might have been a simple break-in or that I'd hallucinated under stress. I can't go back to how my life was before. Every night, the hoarse voice echoes in my ears, and the image of that eerie black button flashes before my eyes. I still wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night, my heart pounding. The legend of the night whistler hangs over me like an inescapable shadow. I don't know who that person was, what they wanted, or why they chose me. Everything feels like an unending nightmare, deeply etched into my very being. My name is Sarah Miller, a freelance photographer specializing in landscape and human interest projects. A couple of months ago, for a shooting assignment that required me to stay in the countryside for a week, I booked a rather vintage-looking detached old house on Airbnb. The listing description boasted that the house used to belong to an old tailor and had preserved many of its original features, making it perfect for artists seeking period charm and inspiration. I thought it was tailor-made for me. Those old objects and weathered walls would surely make for great photos. The house was on the edge of a tiny village, surrounded by vast cornfields, where you could hear little else but the wind rustling through the stalks. The host was a kind-looking old lady. She repeatedly warned me not to go near the abandoned old well in the backyard, saying it was very deep and unsafe. I didn't think much of it at the time, assuming it was just an old woman's typical safety caution. I followed my shooting schedule, constantly seeking inspiration within the house. That afternoon, I was setting up my camera in the living room, focused on an antique gramophone. The only sound in the house was the click of the shutter, so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. As I adjusted the focus, my peripheral vision caught the half-open wooden door in the corner, leading to the backyard. It suddenly, slowly and silently closed on its own. I dropped my camera, my heart leaping into my throat. Wind? No way, there wasn't a breath of air in the house. I distinctly remembered propping that door open slightly with a small stone, and it closed so gradually, as if someone were carefully pushing it. An inexplicable chill crept up from my feet, not a physical cold, but an intuitive, deeply unsettling premonition. I walked to the now closed door and carefully placed my hand on the doorknob. Its icy touch sent a shiver down my spine. I tried to push it, but the door wouldn't budge. It seemed to be locked from the outside. At that moment, all my excuses about it, just being the wind, shattered. I felt a sense of powerlessness, trapped. Then, I began to hear faint sounds from inside the house, not distinct footsteps, but more like a slight dragging noise, sometimes near, sometimes far, as if someone were silently pulling something across the dark corners, or like soft fabric slowly moving along the floor. I strained to listen, but the sounds were too faint, with an eerie rhythm, as if synchronizing with my own heartbeat. I felt like a specimen under a microscope, every move meticulously observed. My body trembled uncontrollably. This silent, unseen threat was far more unnerving than any direct scare. The silence in the house was shattered. The dragging sound became clearer, closer, accompanied by a stale, musty smell of leather and damp earth. I held my breath, my eyes fixed on the hallway leading from the living room to the bedroom. I could feel something slowly approaching from there. Suddenly, a tall, indistinct dark silhouette appeared in the gloom at the end of the hallway. It made no sound, simply moving slowly and silently like a ghost. My blood ran cold, my breathing almost stopped. The silhouette seemed to be wearing a large, sweeping robe, as I could see it dragging slowly across the floor, making the shush-shush sound I'd heard earlier. Then the figure made a movement that chilled me to the bone. It raised a hand, seemingly holding a long, thin needle, making slow, precise piercing motions in the air, as if sewing something invisible. The action was filled with a morbid ritualism, instantly bringing to mind the old tailor my host had mentioned. An extreme dread gripped me. I felt as though I was to be its next creation. My mind went blank, leaving only the primal instinct to survive. The silhouette continued to slowly advance towards me. I could even hear the frantic pounding of my own heart echoing in my ears. The air grew incredibly heavy, and I felt an icy stare, as if I had been stripped of all dignity and will to resist. I don't know where I found the strength, but I stumbled back a couple of steps, knocking over a floor lamp. The shattering glass was deafening in the silence. The silhouette seemed to pause for a moment, but then it slowly resumed its advance. Ignoring the pain, I scrambled to my feet and dashed into the nearest room, the kitchen. There was only a small window in the kitchen, opening out to the tall cornfields. I rushed to it, only to find it nailed shut, impossible to open. In despair, I looked around, my gaze falling on a butcher knife on the counter. The blade glinted menacingly in the dim light. I practically sobbed as I grabbed the knife, its handle cold, but I held it in a death grip. I turned around, and the silhouette was already standing in the kitchen doorway. It still made no sound, just stood there silently, staring at me with that chilling, calculating gaze, as if weighing its prey. A wave of extreme despair washed over me, but the urge to survive made me fight back. I let out a hoarse yell and lunged at it, swinging the butcher knife. I don't know what I hit. I just felt the blade slice through something soft and thick, followed by a sound like dry branches snapping. The silhouette seemed to waver slightly but didn't fall, just took a small step back. I seized the opportunity, desperately pushing open the small door connecting the kitchen to the backyard. It screeched in protest, but I squeezed through with all my might, then ran headlong into the pitch-black cornfield without looking back, letting the cornstalks whip my face until I faintly heard the distant wail of police sirens. I escaped. When the police arrived, they found nothing in the house but some old tailoring tools and a small piece of black, coarse fabric, like burlap, near the kitchen door. Other than that, nothing. They were skeptical of my story, suggesting I might have hallucinated from prolonged solitude or simply encountered a transient. I didn't tell them that as I was being driven away from the house, through the police car window, I saw a blurred, robed figure standing by the old well in the backyard. The one I'd been warned was unsafe. It stood motionless, like a statue, silently watching me being taken away. I can no longer bear to be around old objects, especially historical clothing. Whenever I see mannequins in a tailor shop or hear the rhythmic hum of a sewing machine, I'm gripped by extreme panic. Who was that tailor? Why were they there? And why did they show such strange interest in my arrival? Everything remains an unsolved mystery, like that invisible needle, deeply embedded in my heart. I still avoid staying alone in old, unfamiliar houses. The fear of being silently stalked, of being seen as prey, will always be with me. My name is Alex Thorne, and I'm a freelance graphic designer. Most days, my apartment in the city serves as both my home and my office. I thrive on routine, relying heavily on my high-speed internet and perfectly calibrated standing desk to get work done. A few weeks ago, that routine shattered when a massive, unexpected power outage hit our entire district. It wasn't just a few hours, it stretched into days, making work impossible and life frankly unbearable. My phone battery was dying, my fridge was spoiling, and the thought of another night without a hot shower was too much. I needed a place with stable electricity and reliable Wi-Fi fast. That's how I found the Lakeside Smart Sanctuary on Airbnb. It was a modern, sleek smart home nestled in a newly developed, slightly isolated suburban area on the city's outskirts. The listing promised state-of-the-art automation, seamless connectivity, and a fully integrated living experience. It was a stark contrast to my older apartment, but the allure of guaranteed power and internet was irresistible. The check-in was entirely automated, keyless. The house was pristine, silent, and the soft, reassuring glow of countless smart devices immediately made me feel at ease. This was perfect, a technological haven where I could catch up on work. I spent the first hour marveling at the place. The lights adjusted to my presence, the blinds slid open silently, and a gentle, ambient music track started playing on the invisible speakers. I was admiring the minimalist design of the living room, specifically the sleek, wall-mounted display that controlled everything when it happened. One of the recessed smart lights directly above me, in an otherwise perfectly lit room, suddenly flickered rapidly, a blinding strobe of light and shadow, then winked out completely for a second before snapping back on with a jarring click. My breath hitched. It was too specific, too jarring to be a simple glitch. The house was designed for seamless, silent operation. That abrupt, violent flicker felt like a deliberate rupture in the pristine calm. An immediate, deep unease settled in my gut, a feeling that this smart environment wasn't as secure or benign as it seemed. The incident with the light wasn't isolated. It was just the beginning. As I tried to focus on my laptop, the house started to subtly betray me. Lights in other rooms, far from where I was, would flicker on and off with soft clicks and whirs, as if someone was moving through the empty spaces, deliberately activating them. Then, the automated thermostat, which I had set to a comfortable 72 degrees Fahrenheit, suddenly dropped to a freezing 45 degrees Fahrenheit, then cranked up to an unbearable 90 degrees Fahrenheit within minutes, the vents hissing aggressively. I scrambled to override it, but the settings would just snap back to the extreme temperatures. The most unnerving thing was the front door. Every few minutes, I'd hear a soft, distinct thunk click from the smart lock, even though I knew I'd locked it manually via the wall panel. It sounded like someone was repeatedly attempting to unlock it from the outside, or perhaps relocking it after having gained access. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't a malfunction. Someone was controlling the house's systems, deliberately manipulating my environment. The very technology meant to provide comfort and security was being turned against me, making me feel utterly exposed and vulnerable. The digital harassment intensified, culminating in a full-blown assault on my senses. The subtle clicks and whirs gave way to the automated blinds in the living room snapping shut simultaneously, plunging the house into near total darkness. The soft ambient music abruptly cut out, replaced by a deafening, distorted static blast from every speaker, vibrating through the floors and walls, impossible to turn off. The air conditioning systems, already pushed to extremes, started to pump out blasts of frigid, then scalding air, creating a disorienting, suffocating whirlwind. I stumbled through the pitch-black living room, trying to find a manual light switch, when the floor beneath me suddenly became slick. The automated sprinkler system in the ceiling had just activated, drenching the entire living area, turning the once pristine space into a slippery, chaotic mess. Then, from the smart speaker on the kitchen counter, a voice cut through the static, low and guttural, but eerily synthesized. "Welcome home, Alex. I've been waiting." My blood ran cold. The voice knew my name. As I reeled, disoriented and soaked, The red recording lights on the multiple smart security cameras mounted in the corners of the living room, previously unnoticeable, suddenly flickered on, their lenses slowly rotating in unison to follow my every move, a silent, chilling gaze in the oppressive darkness. I was trapped, exposed, and being watched by an unseen entity manipulating my safe haven. The smell of ozone filled the air, a burning, metallic tang from the overtaxed electronics, mingling with the chlorine from the sprinklers. My heart was a drum in my chest, every nerve screaming. This wasn't just a hack, it was a deeply personal, terrifying invasion. Pure, animalistic survival instinct took over. There had to be a way out. I knew from the host's instructions that the utility closet near the kitchen housed the main breaker box and a manual override panel. Through the chaos of the static and the icy water spraying down, I scrambled towards the kitchen, slipping on the wet floor, my hands outstretched to navigate the oppressive darkness. The automated doors to the pantry and the laundry room slammed shut as I neared them, forcing me to pivot, confirming that the house was actively trying to trap me. I finally reached the utility closet, my hands fumbling for the handle. It was stiff, seemingly locked digitally. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, I kicked it hard, smashing the smart panel on the wall next to it. Sparks flew, and the door clicked open. Inside, I found the main breaker. Without hesitation, I yanked down the large, central switch. The deafening static died instantly, the lights went dark, and the sprinklers sputtered to a halt, plunging the house into an absolute, blessed silence. The red camera lights blinked out. I was no longer being watched. With the main system down, I could finally see the faint outline of the large glass patio door. It had a manual latch. I fumbled with it, my numb fingers struggling, but eventually it gave way with a satisfying click. I burst out into the cool, quiet suburban night, gasping for air, the world outside suddenly feeling impossibly vast and safe. I ran, not caring about the neighbors or what they'd think of my soaked, disheveled state, until I reached the main road and flagged down a bewildered late-night driver. I made it out alive but not unscathed. The police investigated, but found no evidence of a break-in, no external hack, no one hiding on the property. The Airbnb owner was baffled, claiming their state-of-the-art system was impenetrable. They implied I must have had some kind of breakdown from the city power outage. But I know what happened. I know the house was actively trying to keep me there. I can't even stand the sight of a smart thermostat now. Every Wi-Fi signal, every automated voice assistant, every blinking LED light on a smart device fills me with an icy dread. The idea of a place designed for comfort becoming an intelligent, hostile prison is a fear that claws at me every night. Who is it? A disgruntled former employee of the smart home company? A disturbed tech enthusiast nearby? The police found nothing, but I still feel like I'm being watched, not by a person, but by the unseen network of connections that power our modern lives. The Lakeside Smart Sanctuary is back on Airbnb now, its perfect digital facade undisturbed. And I can't help but wonder if it is still waiting silently in the digital shadows for its next guest.